this. You're showing me.
I made this. So, well, when I say I made this, not strictly true.
The AI made it.
The AI made it, at least the images, most of them. So yes, I'm a complete hypocrite. I'm using AI while talking about what a terrible danger they are. Okay, so today I'm going to be talking about the risks of AI. And I've separated it into two broad categories. The first one is not jobs related. In other words, things that AI are doing that is a general risk to society. And then the second section is specifically about the impact on jobs and what that effect is going to be, and what kind of impacts it is already having. So I'm trying to focus on the current technology rather than what may be in the future. So I'm not going to be opining, for example, on whether we're going to be all destroyed by Terminators, because that's completely out of scope. We may be, maybe not, but that's not what this talk is going to be about. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to be talking about is the effect that it's having on hiring decisions. Okay, so when we're going to get a job at a corporation, typically we're going to go through an HR process, and the usual process was you send in your CV, then a human looks through the CVs and figures out which ones they want to go to an interview with, and then you have an interview with a human, and then the humans decide who they want to interview, who they want to hire, and then that goes ahead. Increasingly, specifically in the US, it's not quite as bad in New Zealand now, but there's been more stages and more stages. So, I think there's been people complaining of like 4 or 5 levels of interview, which was pretty ridiculous. AI to the rescue, however. Now we're getting to the point where the CVs get collected, they get evaluated by AIs, and so the shortlist is generated by an artificial intelligence. And then once the artificial intelligence has worked out who they're going to interview, they then send out invites to do the Zoom interviews. And the people come on board and they talk to AI agents. And the AI agents will have a discussion with them back and forth. And then this is marked. And then this is what then goes through to a shortlist. So in other words, before you even get through to talk to a human being, you've gone through the CV analysis side, which is not human. You've gone through a first interview with someone who's not human, and then eventually you might get through to someone who's human. And typically that will be not just one, but you'll then go through in front of a board of humans at this point. The question is, do we really need the humans? I think not, obviously. They're obviously superfluous to requirement. We can probably automate the whole process, I think. So the next one I wanted to talk about was collapse in trusted media. And it's already pretty bad because you've had Google, they captured a lot of the ad space, and so all the revenues went away from newspapers, and so we've had a massive collapse of the media and newspapers specifically.
And journalism.
And journalism, yeah, in general. So the idea in some of my circles was, that's not a problem because we're just going to have citizen journalism pick up the pieces. What Chris says, yes, laugh, because it's been a catastrophe, and you've got basically a whole lot of opinionated people with no facts behind them and no real journalism ethics, trying to do what journalists used to do, but it's been a pretty hideous disaster.
After they're using AI to do it.
Worse, I'll get onto the AI in just a sec, but also you've had the mainstream journalism channels, or mainstream TV channels, for example. They used to be unbiased, and there used to be some legislation around that, but that legislation was repealed.
In the US.
In the US.
No such legislation occurred in most of the Western world.
Yes, well, we generally didn't need it.
No, we didn't.
But the case now is the problem is that it's all about clicks now. Right? In order to be able to to be a successful media, especially in social media, you're trying to get click-throughs. In order to get advertising, you need to drive traffic, and the problem is that what drives traffic isn't things that are true. It's what gets eyeballs, which is generally something that's inflammatory. So that was the background to it. Now AI basically supercharges it because it can work out
The
what
background to what?
sorry
It was the background to?
background to before AI steps into the picture.
Okay.
There was Google.
Because they're not
And-
necessarily linked, it's just they're two things that are happening at the same time.
No, these are linked, so I'm about to tell you how.
Okay,
And I would argue
Terry,
that
sorry.
you draw the wrong conclusion.
Hey,
Why would you not think that given this vast amount of information, the AI itself cannot tease out what the actual truth is embedded in there?
Okay.
When it's ironed out
It's not trying. It's not trying to.
No,
It's
this is a
motivation.
genuine
Okay.
question.
So what I was about to say was, what they're using, what AI is being used for example, is to generate YouTube videos, which pulls out facts and non-facts. Basically, uses ChatGPT to generate a script, which may or may not, in fact, almost 100% not, is actually factual. Right? So you're not dealing with a factual script. You're dealing with something that was
But that's not the fault of the AI. That's the fault of the prompter who's using the AI in a
No, this is the
disinformation
way they're
format.
being used, Chris. It's not. I'm not saying
Chris,
we don't have sentient AI yet, which is making decisions about the way it's used. It's always humans using it in a way that is not necessarily positive. So in this case, you want to make a lot of money. What you do is you take the information that's already on the internet, and you get ChatGPT to make a script. You get Midjourney to be able to create a whole lot of images, just like I've done. None of these are real, by the way. And then you create a video based on potentially, perhaps you get some real video clips, and then you
But
put
what
them
you're
together.
saying reinforces exactly the point I'm making, is that it's bad actors misusing AI. And AI should somehow, and I suspect it will evolve to the point where it will not generate bullshit.
why
It
not?
won't, because that's what we need to do. We need to program the safeguards
Okay.
into
I would
it.
probably
So-
move
so-
on, I reckon,
yeah,
because
okay,
otherwise
so-
we're going to get waylaid and.
Yeah, I know. So the problem, Chris, is that you can run AI on your own local desktop, and you can use whatever model you like. So if you go to a model which refuses to do what you want, you just pick another one. It's that simple. These are tools at the moment. Although I've said that they have minds, but I'm going to leave. That's another discussion. Okay, so at the moment what they're doing is they're generating completely false information. So they'll make something that looks like a science video. It will be professionally spoken. So in other words, the narrator will sound very professional, and it'll be very effective in terms of the presentation. So all the presentation values will be awesome, and you look at it, and people, kids looking at it will see something that looks like the same kind of quality that professional TV programs used to be, but there'll be just misinformation throughout it, right? And so it's not, there's always been misinformation on the internet, but now it's really getting good quality, and it's been automatically generated. So there's like tens of thousands of these videos being generated automatically without any human intervention. And basically those videos are sucking out all the actual hits, and the real human creators, which are making actual factual information and factual videos, they're being swamped by all this crap. And that's the real problem. And it's also pervasive now. You're getting actual newspapers firing journalists in favour of getting AI to do the job. So
I thought that was called to actually give a final presentation.
no, they're actually getting. They're actually. It's not necessarily the front page articles necessarily, but things like sports reports. They'll basically just take the scores and they'll generate some plausible text around it in order to make it sound, look readable and engaging. But it may not represent the reality at all. So the problem with this isn't just the fact that that stuff exists and it's misinformation and it's teaching kids wrong things and whatnot. But it's also creating a trust problem, which is I think what I put in there. There's a trust problem that people like you and me are starting to question everything you see on the internet, which is good for good reason, because it could be generated and it could be complete bullshit. And it's really difficult to tell the difference. Like, you can ask Midjourney to create an image of something, and it could look really convincing, and you could write an article about it, or ask ChatGPT to write an article about it, and if you publish that, it would be convincing to people even though it's completely fabricated. So that's one of the serious problems we're having is with that, not being able to tell whether something's false or not, and not having
Come back
trust
to
in
the
it.
fact that it's not the AI's fault.
No one's assigning fault, Chris. The problem is we're losing trust in the media because we can't know whether something is true or not because of what these AIs are able to do. Again, none of this is about sentient AI, right? So we're not blaming AI as if it's some kind of sentient creature. Somewhat related is censoring expression on social media. So this has been around for almost 10 years now. Started off relatively simply, but if you post something on say Facebook and it's against their policies are, do you think they have tens of thousands of people just reading all of the comments online?
Well, they don't anymore because they've got rid of them all. Didn't he? He just got rid of them. He used to have human
I think you
moderators.
got X.
That wasn't,
Was that it?
No, it was, it was Mark
Facebook has
Zuckerberg.
X.
It's not.
no, that was, okay, so what they got rid of, there wasn't manually, they weren't manual checkers, they were basically putting a policy in place. Like that, but they may review things on the edge, but
He
generally
said he's going
speaking,
to let the human population moderate things, but like the
yes,
community
so
notes.
no, that
on,
was true, that was true.
Yeah.
But prior to that, they still had AI doing all of the actual moderation, right? So they didn't have, they began by hiring a whole lot of people, and then they used the data collected from those people to create an AI which would be able to do the moderation. So AI doing the moderation has been situation normal for YouTube, Facebook, believe it or not, X, Twitter. Basically all the social media platforms were using some kind of AI to do their moderation.
For how long have they been doing this?
I'd say it last, I don't exactly know, but it's something in the region of 10 years. It's one of the oldest applications they use. It's a classifier, so it's actually it's one of the easier things to do. It's not very intelligent, by the way. So, unlike, say, ChatGPT, which actually understands what you're saying, the classifiers are kind of like looking at word mixes and things, and they kind of like score whether they think it's offensive or not offensive, based on the words that are included. So that's why it can be tracked by misspelling words. There's ways around it. But the point is that these social media platforms haven't been used in an unbiased way. So, there's, for example, it's, come to light, for example, that Twitter and Facebook, around the COVID issue, we started having, there was the lab leak theory come out, and basically Facebook and the other social media platforms decided to deep sex it. Now, the question here isn't whether it was a lab leak or not. I don't want to get into that mess, but the fact that the social media platforms decided that we were only going to allow one narrative was the problem. And then later on, they might swap. And the same thing with masks. They had a situation where if you see it, oh, you should be using masks, they'll deep sex your messages. And then Fauci turned around and says, yes, actually, masks were a good idea to do a complete swap. And the same is applied with various other ones. I won't go into detail.
Is even in,
Yeah.
even if they want to read it.
So censorship with AI is probably the oldest problem we've had. It's definitely, it's not a recent one, but it's been around for quite a while.
How long are you saying AI has been around?
AI itself has been around since the 1950s. Yeah. It's not very effective.
Can you advise how you're defining AI for the purpose of this conversation?
Okay, so the term AI was invented in the 1950s. As AI as an artificial intelligence, that's a machine appearing to be intelligent or doing some kind of apparent reasoning.
So something that can pass the Turing test or different?
No, AGI, well, it's a bit slippery in terms of definitions, but let's say AI is just something that it can be very narrow intelligence, like a chess playing robot or drafts playing robot or
Predictive text.
predictive text or even a calculator in some ways. They're very narrow machines which aren't really, they don't have what we would consider thought. AGI is a general intelligence, which means that it has a broad range of information available, and it has the same kind of reasoning capabilities that humans do in terms of being able to take a general problem which they haven't seen before and come up with an answer to it. That's the kind of thing that you'd expect an AGI to be able to do. You don't expect a machine that was made to play chess to figure out, to give you a recipe for making scones, for example. But if you go up to a general intelligence system, you can get it to play chess reasonably well. You can get it to give you a recipe for making scones, and the next day, if you want to write a termination letter to an employee, you can get them to do that too. So it's general purpose, and that's kind of what we have now with the current models. It's a form of general intelligence. The definition of that is a little bit squishy. Some people say in order to be AGI, it needs to be better than 50% of humans in every area, and it's not that at the moment. Although, it's questionable how long that's going to last. But I don't want to go too much into that, positing when that's going to happen. Okay, so I talked about the censoring. Censoring expression has been the oldest application for AI, pretty much. It's what was done first with social media. Censoring expression. Okay, one of the more recent ones. So there's a United Healthcare in the US had the pleasure of having their CEO murdered because of their deplorable behaviour in terms of rejecting valid health claims. My understanding was that they denied up to 30% of their health claims, and the way they achieved this was with AI, because what they did is they created a model which would take the information, the health information about the claim, and then compare it against their policy at extreme detail. So in other words, there's a whole lot of exclusions and complicated clauses inside their policies, and what they'd be able to do is make a complete comparison to make sure that the policy was absolutely covered the claim being made. And by doing so, they were able to find lots of small niggly exceptions so that they could basically not pay the claim. And that was legal because that was in the clauses. Right? So they weren't just saying, no, we're not going to cover you for no reason. At least that's my understanding. I think they did have to have a reason, but the point is that the AI was much more effective in being able to find reasons for not covering.
I just want to make a spot diagnosis. This patient is not very well, and he looks like he's having an inferior myocardial infarct and is in atrial fibrillation. Just want to point that out.
Excellent. I'll let the AI
And I deny cover.
You deny cover. So yeah, we're now having AI make decisions about our healthcare. Well, not us, because we have a decent healthcare system, but in the US, they're allowing that to happen. And obviously we have to be careful about the fact that, if we had a private healthcare system introduced to New Zealand, we'd probably see the same kind of thing happening here. In fact, you probably wouldn't be able to get exactly the same kind of issue here because of the public health system, but you'd have to be. In fact,
it's used to push patients back into the health system. So you take the insurance fees, and then you deny them, and then they end up in the public health system.
Yeah, possibly, but I should be. So I've been saying how terrible AI can be. It can be used for bad things, and that's what Chris was saying. It's not the AI making a decision that it's going to be bad. It's just that companies are making use of it in ways that are going to make them money.
AI is transforming medicine in a good way. So
Yes.
it's just really important we say that.
Yes. So the thing is, we have a lack of doctors, and there's a compelling argument that having some kind of medical diagnosis outside of that, like a first level. In fact, are you going to shoot me down?
I might, you
You
just
might.
never know, do you?
It's a red dot.
I know this was mentioned by someone in the government, so yeah, it's a bit.
So just say what you're going to say.
Okay,
I'm not sure what you're going to say.
So the thing was, there's a lack of doctors, and so there's people who are not getting care at the moment, and so this is not about the care of the quality of the doctor's concern. It's the fact that people can't get to doctors a lot of the time now. So if you had an AI system which could give people reliable data based on, if they describe their symptoms and then they might, send them to get tests and things based on the descriptions of their symptoms, or, I'm not exactly sure how this would work exactly, but for the minor ailments, in other words, if you describe your symptoms and it's, you've got a sniffle or something, then it might be able to do something about that without involving a doctor initially. And then you'd have a second level of actual doctors who would be able to see people who had more serious symptoms. And that way you'd be able to make more efficient use of your doctors.
It's true that actually there is quite a lot of evidence that good AI is better than a human in that situation. We need to keep pressing on with this. That is, not only
there's two ways, actually.
because we can't get doctors, they actually do a better job.
Yeah.
They can do, okay?
So there's two ways that they can help. The first one is completely automated. And the second way is, and obviously doctors are using AI at the moment to do diagnosis as well. Because, look, I'm probably going to get to me actually. I'm a software developer. The models are better than me now. It's just a fact. Right? I can describe what I need in terms of the software and it'll write an implementation. I'll still check the implementation, but usually they're writing with better code than me and they're doing it in a fraction of a second. Why would you want to spend 2 hours writing your own code if you could just go and ask for something that does it for you? Similar kind of thing in medicine. If someone can, come in and give you a description of what the problem is, you can type it in or capture that information verbally even, and then it can give you a diagnosis or at least an analysis of what the situation is. Give that to the doctor and they can figure out what the next stage is. Insurance company tracking your car. Tesla's now an insurance company. Other insurance companies are doing this as well. They're talking to companies who do telematics on their cars. And basically what they're doing is they're looking at the driver behaviour in order to be able to set the premiums. So that's nice, that's helpful, isn't it? You can get lower premiums if you're a good driver.
What if a car has multiple drivers?
Just make the risk over all of it. It doesn't matter.
It doesn't really matter. They're insuring the car, not the driver. But more importantly, they're getting the data of everywhere you go. Right, so the data of everywhere people go in their car is being sent off to the insurance company. But that's fine because they're not going to leak the data. And that's going to be cool. No.
That's slight sarcasm.
Yeah.
Watch out.
Peter, do you have
I'm
any,
sorry, people don't know yet.
do you have any idea how that plays with New Zealand, if that's happening that much in New Zealand and how it plays with the Privacy Act?
The cars in New Zealand are being sold equipped with the telematics.
With what?
With the telematics.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that their data is being sold to insurance companies, but they wouldn't tell you. So,
Surely they have to tell you.
No.
Under the Privacy Act.
You sign the terms and conditions.
Bought a car.
What?
When you bought the car.
It'd be interesting. Okay, so you're right. There's the Privacy Act which should apply. I haven't asked the question in New Zealand. I'm talking about primarily the US. So
No.
Well, let's ask Gemini.
It's also done in England for particularly young drivers. So they get a black box in their car.
It's been around since the 90s.
Yeah.
I should also note
Yeah.
we all, a lot of us track ourselves anyway using
Well,
the phone.
exactly.
So yeah. So
I think it does underline the point that AI has been slowly growing. It might be exponential,
yeah.
but it has been sitting there just in the background for a long time.
I guess I'll talk about a general problem with AI, and that is, companies have been collecting data about us forever. And generally speaking, they haven't had the ability to use it very much, to do anything with it. So they collect the data, but it's like, oh, what do we do with this? They can do some stats with it, but it's pretty limited. Now with AI, they can do a whole lot, it enables a whole lot of capabilities which just weren't within reach before. And this kind of appraisal about premiums, for example, they might be very effective at it. By looking at your behaviour, they could work out what the chance of you having an accident is, and it could be very accurate. The question is whether we really want to be sharing that data. As David says, though, I'm talking primarily I'm talking about the US because the source of data I got was from the US. Also not in New Zealand. We're not sentencing criminals in New Zealand using AI yet, but that was happening in the US. They've since stopped it, as I understand it, but there was a program written in order to be able to do sentencing. It turned out, astonishingly enough, somehow black people were sentenced worse than white people for some reason. Crazy, but okay. So the thing with bias, you can collect a whole lot of data, and even if the gender and ethnicity is not stored in the data, there are relationships between the different variables which can indicate, basically signal back to the model. And so what happens is the model somehow derives that, for example, if you provide your name, certain names are more common in one society than
Peter, can I give another example of that, an old example?
Yep.
This happened, but I'm getting the details wrong. Early classification or AI systems, they were looking at airplanes to shoot down enemy airplanes. And the data set was trained on all the American airplanes, I think, and on the Russian airplanes. And in tests, it got a very, very good, fantastic accuracy on it. As soon as it was in the battlefield, the thing kept on misidentifying aircrafts, because what it was actually identifying was not the planes itself, but the backgrounds, which was, grey versus clear skies.
Right.
So there's a whole lot of information that's not necessarily obvious to a human being that the AI is just picking up and it will never know.
But
Like
the
Clever
same
Hans, the horse.
Sorry?
If anybody's heard of Clever Hans, the horse. They thought the horse could count when people were counting,
Yes.
but it turns out the horse was just watching their eye movements, and so it seemed like it could count.
That's really
The
interesting,
same-
isn't it?
The same thing happened with wolves and dogs. So they had a lot of picture. They wanted to distinguish between wolves and dogs in the classifier. The thing is that wolves were generally photographed in wilderness background or in snowy background, and dogs were usually photographed in like home backgrounds. So they weren't actually distinguishing between the dogs and the wolves. They were distinguishing between the backgrounds.
Just one small thing. The people who captured the offenders or whatever and brought them before the judges, they also have a bias. So maybe it was just the sheer number.
Yeah, this was just sentencing, so they've determined guilt already. So this is, the AI is just basically determining
How long?
that someone's been prosecuted and found guilty. Now we need to find out, what is the sentence we should give this person based on.
And on average, black people,
Yeah,
people who weren't white got longer sentences.
longer sentences, yeah. So they're not quite at the stage where they're actually determining guilt or not.
No.
So that's still out of still purely human. Although it is the case that I think I mentioned earlier that lawyers have been doing briefs written by GPT or written by a model.
Yep.
And citing cases that don't exist, which was kind of the trip up they had.
But they've done that for years.
Not the citing cases that don't
So
exist.
citing cases, yeah, so there's actually a law, that's quite, effectively it's perjury, because you're
Yeah.
lying to the court. So it's actually a very serious offence. And the lawyer who did that almost got struck off. They got a big fine.
The lawyer that allowed ChatGPT to do it.
Yeah.
So ChatGPT made up the case.
Yeah, they made up the case, and then he submitted it, and then got in trouble. And then a more recent one was an AI expert who used ChatGPT to do a submission to the court, specifying that they're an expert in AI, and they did it using ChatGPT, which made up false
didn't
links
check
to their expertise.
Oh,
So we're getting worse. Now on to machines deciding who dies.
Really good quality people will pass it.
The Israeli military have a system, it's called the Gospel. Not a great
According to who?
good question. according to the Israeli government, I think. So the point of this machine, it's not a, it has nothing to do with the actual execution of people, but what it does is it collects data and then determines which targets to hit. So it works out where people go and what their movements are, and it uses things like telephone data and satellite data, and basically merges all of this data together to create target lists. And then basically the target lists are given to the planes who then go bomb the targets.
So why do you find this to be objectionable?
Okay, I find this objectionable because the way they calculate the civilian casualty rate, the acceptable casualty rate, is that they have a number. Like if you say, oh, we're going to bomb this house to kill this gorilla or whatever, then there's a certain acceptable number of people that could be killed. What do you think that number is?
That's academic. The question is, before AI, how do you think it was done?
Well, in Dresden they carpet bomb the whole city. We won't go
Yes,
there.
but that's a bit of an extreme. I think the point I'm trying to make is that AI is probably doing a slightly better job than humans, because that would be virtually random
Right.
for humans.
So I don't think it's a similar problem that we came with before. Basically, it's laundering. So in other words, if you want to have the information believed to be unbiased and accurate, you launder it through an AI system. The destruction in Gaza has been something like 70% of all structures.
Can you talk a bit more about laundering? Are you saying that laundering is a sort of like a smokescreen for the authorities to say we
Yes.
used AI, therefore it was AI's fault rather than?
So I'll go back to the insurance company example. Right. So with the insurance company example, someone would put a claim in and they would deny it. But the ones that were denied, 90% of them were incorrectly. Actually, I'm thinking about that. I'll come back to that. Yeah, 90% of them were incorrectly denied. In other words, they should have been.
So they're relying on people not challenging.
Yes.
So
And
that sounds like that was a deliberately loaded AI program. So the prompt there was quite,
Now you're getting it.
it was what our profit line. I can't see the similarity. These guys are waging a war. Do you think that the absence of an AI would make it better for the Gazans?
Maybe if you had humans more involved in the decisions,
That's what they were in the past.
they would be able to tease it out, and they would not be.
They're trying to say, hey, we care about civilian deaths. The number, by the way, is 300. Onwards. Weapon delivery systems. Yay.
Should we just say we're talking about gardens and garden pests and not humans?
No. Well, that's, the thing is, I know it's uncomfortable, and that's kind of the point, is that AI is now being employed. It's not just the targeting, but they're actually, you load the targets into a machine, and then the machine, cruise missiles have been around forever, so that's not huge news. But what these are able to do is go over the battlefield, develop target lists. In other words, they're looking at it and observing the ground, and they're able to find, basically do hunt things down and target.
It's held together with cling film.
No.
Yeah,
Duct
these things,
tape.
this is one from Ukraine. So basically what they're doing is they're just getting basically shells and then just driving the shell into the target, which
Is it they're using cardboard drones in Ukraine now?
they've been using a lot of things. They did use cardboard, not those
The
drones.
Russians have just come out with a cardboard aircraft.
Yeah.
Cardboard.
Pretty
That's
cost
not just
effective.
already.
Only got to go 20 minutes.
So these things are not just one singular one now. They've got swarms. So what they do is instead of just sending one up and having a remote, you send 20 up, and they all communicate with one another, and so that they all can see what each other can see. And so you get a whole lot of drones go over. You might get a SAM missile take one out, for example, but it doesn't help them because then the launcher is going to be targeted. So basically you send a whole swarm of these things over, and they're all automated. They don't have any human controllers. other than there'll be a human controller to control all of the swarm, but they don't control the singular units. The singular units are able to coordinate themselves in order to do the attacks. Now to be honest,
frightening.
you're not seeing that technology really used in anger in the Ukraine yet. But I know the US have it. And I know,
It's not,
China.
it's not even new.
yeah, I mean, this is years old.
Yeah, it's before AI was a thing. Before large language models were a thing.
Yeah, okay. So the difference now, I mean, they used to be they were swarms, but they were dumb. In other words, whereas now, by dumb I mean you almost had to tell them exactly where to go and what to do and what the targets were.
Mm.
Whereas now they're actually searching, they're using imagery to go and actually actively search for targets. And then they basically create a target map and then they organise which one's going to hit which. And they can do that autonomously, which is great fun. I actually recommended that to the government years ago, but that's another story. Yeah, New Zealand's pretty terrible in terms of, we don't have people to defend us, so having autonomous weapons at sea would probably be a good idea. This particular quote came from my 2005 article, No War of Machines versus Humans. So we shouldn't be expecting to see the Terminator kind of situation for the very good reason that that would be catastrophic for machines and not so bad for us, because we're pretty adaptable. We don't need a lot of infrastructure, whereas machines need a lot of infrastructure to be able to create themselves.
And you said that in 2005, which is
Yes.
now 20 years ago,
Yes,
and you would not change that statement.
correct.
Okay.
That's why I'm raising it. It's a little bit of a crow, I guess, but yeah. The point is that it's the same point still applies. So the second part of this is companies will willingly hand over authority to thinking machines to survive in a world of other ultra-intelligent thinking machines. Pretty much exactly what's happening. So you see all of the top-level AI companies. They're basically creating really intelligent machines as fast as they can, and that's going to be a competitive edge that just can't be beat. And it's not just going to be used for them. Basically, they're going to sell that into all of the different companies to make all their company decisions. That's pretty much exactly what I've been talking about in the first half. In other words, all of those, HR decisions, marketing decisions, strategic logistics decisions, all of that is going to be controlled by AI. In fact, just thinking about that, a lot of it already is, but it's just going to become better and better, and eventually it's just not going to involve humans. So we've got drivers, for example. If we get rid of drivers, I haven't got to that yet, but basically the more people you take out of it, the more efficient it becomes, and the more profit they make. Why wouldn't they do it? So that's the overall feature that I'm seeing, is that we'll be, over time we're getting more and more automation, more and more AI control, and eventually we end up, there is no war. It's just we wake up one day and we live in a society where basically the technology doesn't need us.
But, at that point, what happens when the technology decides it wants more energy?
Presumably it would have made the gas stations, or the power stations to make that happen.
And we're competing with them for energy. Our needs are going to be
Okay. What's just been passed in the US?
Maybe
Well,
build
they
it
can-
on it.
We don't know.
Yes, actually, but
We don't know because they fired all the public relations people.
luckily Trump announced it 2 weeks ago. It's called Stargate. And Stargate is a $500 billion infrastructure program to power and promote AI infrastructure. Now, sorry, did we not know this?
Yeah, I thought Musk laughed that out of, that was...
Oh, it must do, yes.
That was laughed out 24 hours later.
No, I mean, don't trust Musk, obviously. So,
Musk, Trump?
okay, so there was SoftBank, Oracle, NVIDIA, and OpenAI. In other words, all of the major players. Trust me, they have the clout. I don't know if they have 500 billion, but they've got enough to do it. And potentially the government's going to be involved as well, I think.
Why is it called Stargate? Is there involvement with satellites and... No, I'm just thinking if there's involvement with communicating satellites and...
No, not at all. No, I have no idea why they called it Stargate. It's pretty stupid.
Probably because Elon liked the TV show.
Probably. No, because Elon was against it. But anyway, the question I had in my mind, which is kind of, if AI were in control, that's exactly what I would see happening. Just a thought. It's like,
Would you define what Stargate is?
Stargate is an infrastructure project which is going to be created over the next 4 or 5 years, and it's going to cost $500 billion. And it's going to establish new generation, because they need new generation to drive all of the computers.
Power generation, you mean?
Power generation, yeah. And also they're going to install a whole lot of new computers and things and big data centers in order to be able to compete with China, or keep ahead with China. That's the basic gist of it. It's a national security type project.
Based in